Orders, Commander.
How many times must I tell you? Mind the nerdish cap!
We all
After a long pause and long delay, we're back. A variety of reasons. I was sick, and then we had the holidays. So I guess Merry Christmas, Happy New Year,
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, Happy President's Day. We're actually recording this on President's Day, so there we're timely there. So we're back after a long last. We're going to change things up a little bit. So of course, kind of we'll start with the updates. So, like I said, I've been under the weather. That's been the main delay and everything. Just life in general been hectic and everything. Then we want to do sort of a, our free forum kind of discussion part, and then Dante's going to hit us with some news and stuff that he's been hearing and things like that. So with that said, like I said, what's been going on with you since end of last year?
Oh man, a lot of movement, a lot of motion,
a lot of motion.
Yeah, a lot of just working and really kind of working my chops up on producing and everything like that. I have some new peers around me that are intrigued by what I can do production wise.
Oh,
so
cool.
I've been helping them out, making some beats and stuff like that, getting myself trying to get working on a little beat shop, just because of the ease of access now of me being able to get stuff out like that. I want to be able to get it up on a store somewhere, and kind of give back to the musical community in the way that I was always using it, because when I first started out, I'd be buying type beats everywhere. I'd be buying type beats like that store, that producer. So I kind of wanted to just jump into that myself. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Cool. Well, me, now that I'm feeling better and everything, I've actually, so I do this art show, like but Fan Expo once a year, and normally, because it's always in either late June or early July, so normally probably around the May time frame, I finally come up with what I'm going to do, and then I start scrambling and 0 hour trying to get everything done. But this year I came up with my main concept early, so I'm really happy about that. And I've really so far I've got potentially so far 15 pieces that I'm mostly okay with. But I think I have time to really develop it and maybe have that one outstanding piece too that I want to display, because I want to have a backdrop and decide whether I'm going to paint the backdrop or have it printed large and everything. So so I'm very happy about that. So all right, so that's it kind of brings you guys up to date. Nothing super exciting, but we're back. So I think we were going to start talking about what we were going to originally start talking about. Game of Thrones. Would you want to start there? Or where do you want to start?
Yeah, we could start with Game of Thrones. We could also start with what our favorite shows were of 2023, if you wanted to do that.
Sure.
So I guess I'll start off then.
Sure.
For me, I have two. I kind of cheated. Because it's interesting because both of these shows, their release schedule, like part of it happened in the year prior, and then part of it is happening in 2023. So my first one was The Last of Us. I really, really enjoyed that show, much more than I was expecting to.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those shows that it proves the idea of, like, when you have a real labor of love put forth and, like, between the writing and like the directing, the actors and their
Right.
performances, like when you have all of that come together along with like, you know, meeting the vision of what the original property was trying to
Mm-hmm.
set out
Mm-hmm.
for. I think you just have something beautiful with that. And it's you know, Neil Druckmann, which was the developer or like one of the lead developers of the original game,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he had a big hand in this, and I think that that's one of the main reasons why it
It worked.
communicates that vision so well of
Mm.
like what the game was doing. Like it
Uh,
translates to show really well.
right. When you really
Um,
love the source material because it's your source material. Yeah.
Right, right. And you know, I think that it's Last of Us, I feel like if there was gonna be a TV show or like a movie adaptation or something akin to that, I feel like The Last of Us was a really good story to pick from because it's
Mm.
one of those it was originally one of those games that like it didn't have a crazy amount going on like gameplay wise, but
Okay.
a lot of like the story in it and like kind of the cinematic element of the
Mm.
game itself was already there.
You're
Like it
right.
was already a very cinematic and very like when you're watching a cinematic in the game, it's like you're watching like a little bit of a TV episode,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Um and so it already kind of had those elements that really made it meld into an actual show, I feel like, a lot easier,
Right. Right. They
as
did the
opposed
homework.
yeah, like as opposed to like other games where like the gameplay is the game, right? Like where
Right.
it's like you're
It's not
playing
story driven. It's action driven or whatever.
right, like the gameplay is what you're doing the whole entirety of the game. You're not sitting there like watching a story at any point during the game, right? So I think that that's one of the reasons why it really worked for me. It
Mm-hmm.
was one of the reasons why it surprised me as well because um, I went into it not really expecting too much of like a difference in the storytelling, but there
Mm.
was just enough of like there's some tweaks here and there that were different from the way that the story was communicated in the game
Okay.
that I feel like landed a lot better, especially for being on TV.
All right.
Um, but yeah, so that was one of them, and then the other one was of course Invincible season 2, and that one is cheating because we haven't even gotten part 2
Oh,
of
but
season
yeah.
2 yet.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But
Which looks pretty intense. I finally saw the
yeah,
trailer.
yeah, but I just loved that first half so much that like it felt like you know the wait was really worthwhile, right? Like
Mm.
it felt like it it felt like one of those shows as well where like you know and I feel like it's probably not the same for everybody, but it was one of those shows like where I when I finished season 1,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that there was going to be a long wait, um but I didn't really like feel that wait too much,
Mm.
which was kind of interesting. There's a lot of other shows where like I definitely feel the weight of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, it's definitely feel like it's been 2 years or whatever
Right. Right.
since I last saw this last thing. But I really didn't like feel that with Invincible for some reason. And part of the reason might have been just because like when you start season 2, it feels like you're just jumping right back into you know
Mm-hmm.
where it was left off, and like it the show itself doesn't have too much of like a time jump or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably another reason for that. um but yeah, between the animation and the writing and the voice acting performances, like I just feel like it really hit home, and it was definitely like something that I felt like I needed to see last year. Like it was one of those shows that like um really really kind of helped drive me a lot more and stuff too. um but yeah, so that was my two
Hmm.
favorite shows of 2023.
So I would say, and this is probably like out of left field. I don't know if you even heard of this one, but Blue Eye Samurai.
Oh.
It's a Netflix series, and I really enjoyed the heck out of it. It's really good storytelling. Really felt like kind of a throwback to my youth, where you'd have these series that were there was a lot of action, yeah,
Hmm.
but there was a lot of storytelling and a lot of character development as well. and it caught me off guard. And what it was is a friend of mine that I follow that's an artist is actually one of the designers, the character designers for the show.
Oh
So that's
wow.
the only reason I even gave it any attention,
Oh,
unfortunately. But I fell in love with it,
that's awesome.
right? And I mean, I'm not a big binger type person, but I ended up binging as much as I could. I think they ended up doing like week to week or something, but so I couldn't binge it straight out. But when I started, it was already been on for a while, so I was able to binge quite a bit of it.
Mm.
Enjoyed the heck out of that. And then this one I know you've had mixed feelings about, but I actually did enjoy Stranger Things season 4.
Mm.
And for me, I think it was the evolution. So I think reality is you got to throw out season 2. Season 2 was just not, it was not what you wanted it to be. But I felt like season 1 was sort of a touch of evil. Like
Mm.
what happens if you touch evil and it looks back at you, right? Like
Mm.
looked into the darkness and it looked back, right?
Mhm.
And then season 3 was kind of the shape of evil, where evil started using all the people from the town and everything and made itself into this monstrous thing, right?
Mm.
But
Mhm.
now I think season 4 really we finally got to what's the mind of evil.
Mm.
What is really what
What's really the motivation
right?
and
What makes
yeah.
evil tick?
Uh.
And that's the whole thing is uh, we always do these studies and stuff like that. We're always trying to get into the mind of these people that do these different things. But what if the thing that we're trying to get in the mind of is pure evil itself,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
And I think so. I think a lot, maybe not a lot of people, but I think many people may have missed that.
Mm.
And to me, that's really what happens. So, like I said, you got to throw out season 2, but season 1, touch of evil, shape of evil, now the mind of evil.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I still got to get caught up on Stranger Things. I think it was probably like season 2 because I remember watching season 2, and I remember just like not being like, and I don't even know if it was really because I was like disappointed in the season itself. Like it's been so long since I watched it, so I'd probably have to like honestly rewatch it all.
yeah,
But like I just remember that by the end of season 2 I lost my like care for it. Like I
right.
just like I was just kind of like, man, like I don't really care to like continue watching this story. And it
Mm-hmm.
was probably because the story wasn't like doing too well in season 2, and so I
Right.
was just kind of demotivated from that point of like, do they really have anything to go off from
Right.
here? And
Yeah,
like,
it really felt like season 2 was kind of a grab bag. They were one, it was very clear they were trying to build something to do spin-offs,
hmm.
and that didn't work. But two, I think it really felt like they didn't know what their cohesive theme was. Because, like I said, the first one, because remember, she touched the Demogorgon, and that's what kicked off all these events.
Hmm.
So, like I said, Touch of Evil and everything from season 1. And then season 3, like I said, him bringing all the people and basically kind of their either naivety or prejudice, whatever it was, and it all manifested into one giant monster. So the shape of evil and
Hmm.
everything. And then, like I said, finally in season 4, which was beautiful how they kind of tied it all in, where this has kind of been a theme all through it, and we just didn't realize it. Now, reality is it's retrofitted, so they they they, they revised some history, revisionist history here, but still it worked because now we know we really have a motivation, we really have a theme, and now we really have something, you know, solid, something cohesive that
Hmm.
we know has to be stopped. Right. So yeah. So I think they're on the right track if they finish this out, and I think this next season, the last season anyway.
Hmm.
So, but I think they got somewhere where they can actually finish it out. All right. So what do you have next?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about House of the Dragon.
Okay.
There's like a bunch of different new stuff that's coming out about it that we could probably cover in a later episode. But I kind of just wanted to get your opinion on like what was some of your favorite sequences from House of the Dragon? Like maybe just like a couple of scenes that like really stood out to you
Yeah.
of like, wow, that's really cool, or like whoa, this is really intriguing and interesting.
Yeah, there's so many, and I really did enjoy House of the Dragon. In some ways, I probably, to be honest, well, definitely more than the last season of Game of Thrones, but
Yeah.
probably, to be honest, in some ways more than Game of Thrones overall. But what's the queen that husband they thought was dying at sea? The gosh, because it's been a while now. The the king that ran all the ships and everything like that, and then they kidnapped his wife when they decided to usurp the throne.
Ooh, are you talking about Corlys and like the crab eater?
Yeah, so not the crab eater, but yeah, the king of the sea or whatever. And then they kidnapped his wife when they were trying to usurp the throne. And then she got to her dragon and showed up to the ceremony.
Oh yeah, okay,
Right?
yeah, that's Rhaenys
Okay,
getting
that's
on her dragon.
right.
Yeah.
I love that scene. I love that she didn't torch them. She just
Yeah.
showed. She's like, I could torch you right now.
Right,
Right?
yeah.
But then ultimately that might not win the day because then you'll become martyrs. So I'm just gonna let you know I can torch you right now. But I'm going to leave
I'm just
and
gonna have my
join the other side. So you've been warned, right?
yeah. I'm just gonna have my dragon scream in your face.
Right,
We're gonna show you this anger because
right.
yeah.
Show you that you are not going to keep this throne. So live it up for time you can,
Uh,
because we'll be back.
right.
I love that
Yeah.
part, and I do love that it feels like, even though some characters, no matter what, are going to have plot armor, it does feel like characters you wouldn't expect that you would expect to have plot armor don't necessarily have plot armor,
Oh yeah.
right? So
Oh yeah.
that last sequence in the finale for the part
Yeah.
one. Oh, I was like, oh, poor guy, and
Yeah.
oh,
That's actually one of the ones that I was gonna mention was, Aemond and Rhaegar going after Lucerys and Arax. It was such a just uneven like
battle to start with, and his little dragon was mad. It's like, I'll prove my point. He had little dog syndrome or something like that.
right,
So
right.
he kept spurring on, and the big guy's like, you know what? Screw you both.
And that's such a perfect way to put it too. It's like a chihuahua trying to step up to a pit bull
And
where it's
eventually the
like
pit bull's gonna go, you know what? I'm just gonna chomp you.
exactly, yeah.
I'm
It's
just
like,
gonna take you down.
you know what? I'm just gonna show you like how nature works here. Like this isn't the game. Like the game you're playing right now isn't what you think it is.
So it's so funny. Let me tell you the story. So when I was a kid, my aunt had two dogs, Lightfoot and Demon.
Mm,
And Demon was a Doberman Pinscher, but Lightfoot was this gigantic shepherd. I mean, he was massive, right?
uh,
But he was the nicest, kindest, most mellow dog you could ever imagine.
mm,
So you introduce this German Shepherd into the house, and the German Shepherd was like, I rule the rest. Everybody respect me. And he kept nagging at Lightfoot, nagging at him, nipping at him, and nipping at him. And finally, one day, Lightfoot turned around and bit him on the face,
oof.
cracked his jaw. So from that point on, Demon had like this smile permanently built on his face because his jaw, when they fixed it, it just put him in this permanent smile, which went with his name perfectly. So when Demon came in the room, he's like, but to your point though, is like you keep pushing, and that bigger dog's going to show you why he's the bigger dog.
Right.
He
Yeah.
should, the poor thing too, because he was trying to get away. He's like, what the heck? What's going on? And Lightfoot's like, I'm just showing you, but he put so many pounds of pressure, he shattered his jaw.
Oh man.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Wow.
So, anyway, sorry. So you were saying something more?
Yeah, no, I mean, like it was it's such a good sequence, not only to show like that sort of nature element of the dragons, where it's like like
Mm-hmm.
big dog versus little dog, but it's also like the idea of that dynamic entering into like uh the dynamic between Aemond and Lucerys,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like Aemond is the big dog
Right.
and Lucerys is the little dog.
Right.
And, they already have a history of the little dog kind of using like a, rather than using the pure brawn that Aemond would have used when they were younger and like
Right.
having the squabble as the kids. Like Aemond was the kind of kid that was like, I'm just going to use pure brawn. My tool is a rock,
Right.
and I'm going to use my strength along with this rock to like do whatever I can
smash.
physically.
Right.
But then Lucerys was the one who pulled out the knife
Mm-hmm.
and was like, this is like I don't really have to use too much brawn here, but it's a knife. It's sharp.
Right.
If it hits you, it's gonna fucking cut you.
Right.
And so it's just kind of that cool element of like Aemond feeling like he needs to get back at Lucerys for like kind of like slighting him in that way, right? But then like it becomes this like brutal cycle of like, you know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. And it's like
Right.
Aemond literally wanted Lucerys to blind himself
So
because he
because he
lost
wanted
an
an eye
eye.
for an eye. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like just it's such a cool. I really really like that sequence, and it was one of my favorite things about the book originally as well. Was like it's such a cool way to communicate like so many different thematic elements like that of like big dog, little dog, an eye for an eye, like just that whole concept coming to a full on clash, and now Aemond is left, you know, feeling like the ultimate guilt and like the ultimate like because he started the war, right?
Right.
Like
He's the
he's
one that's kicked off
literally
the war now.
yeah, like
And it's going to be interesting to see what price he's going to pay for actually officially starting the war.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of my favorite sequences as well. One of the ones I really liked was Viserys, the king who passes away. His last walk to the throne, and like how his brother helps him up to the throne and everything. Like that was like such an epic sequence. Like it was like as soon as they opened the doors and they announced like King Viserys, like all these titles and everything, it was just like, man,
They're
like
like, oh.
yeah, it was so cool, and it was also a very like uh kind of like a almost like a Phantom of the Opera moment. And I don't know if I say that just because of like
When
his
he
whole
takes his
mask and
mask off
everything.
and it's like his face is rotted away.
Right, but it was like just such an epic sequence of like you know, you thought that this character was already like done and on his deathbed and everything, and then he finally comes out like for his last hurrah essentially. And you know, everyone that's in the room has different reactions to that, right? So like you have Alicent and Otto who see him coming in and they're like getting worried because they're like, oh man, we were kind of trying to slip in this succession, and like now we don't really know
what
how
he's
this is
gonna
gonna
say.
go.
Yeah.
And then you have Rhaenyra, who was trying to like fight tooth and nail to like keep the succession going, and then she turns around and sees him coming in, and it's like that big breath of relief for her when it's like
She's like,
finally he's here to defend me. Yeah. And then, you know, having the conflict between Daemon and Viserys all prior to that, and then, you know, when he finally comes in for that last hurrah, Daemon finally shows up again as a brother and is like, I'm here to support you, like you're my brother.
Exactly. I'll put agendas aside for a minute.
Exactly.
And
like
you.
yeah, and that was just such a like a heartwarming and cool and also like kind of scary moment because you didn't know what the hell was gonna happen next. Like you're like, man, this is like the ultimate like soap opera, like fantasy soap opera moment.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, and then you have a dude get his head chopped off directly after that,
right? Because he brings up the whole bastard thing. And it's like, oh well, okay,
yeah.
I guess that wasn't the way to go.
Yeah. Man. But yeah, so there's that one, and then the whole sequence of Daemon like kind of reacquainting the Kingsguard with like how important their position is where when he's talking to them, and then his dragon Caraxes comes down from the cliff and they're like standing side by side. Like that was such a sweet moment, and it was like man, like it really is showing of just how intimidating the Targaryens were, and like why like you hear all of this talk about them, and you know the you know, I guess like more current Game of Thrones timeline, I guess you could say, how like you hear so much talk of like how the Targaryens were like really a force to be reckoned with, and like how, you know, their dragons alone were just like essentially the kings without being delegated the kings, right? It was just like such a cool moment to really see that in play, where it's like, you know, you have the Kingsguard, which are like the highest trained, like they've dedicated their lives to protecting the king or the queen, and they've trained their whole lives for this. Like they are the top of the line knights that you could ever find within the realm,
Right.
and they are scared. Like they're sitting there like horrified looking at this dragon. And it's just like such a cool moment of that power dynamic. And I think that was one of the moments in the show that really, really showed that for me. And I hope that they have some more moments like that going into like season 2 and such. But yeah, those were my favorite sequences. Did you have specifically any favorite characters?
I think Damon is still probably one of my favorite characters. Although towards the end there, where he threatened the queen to be, that part was a little questionable to me. I'm like, okay, Damon, maybe you're going too far. Maybe it's the heat of the moment thing. But other than that, even when he killed his wife, I didn't mind that so much. I mean, the actress was really a good actress, so it was too bad they didn't come up with more for her to do, because she did a really good job in her short bit of time. But you know, unfortunately, I didn't hold that against Damon at that point. But yeah, other than that one scene, but Damon, I think he really pulls it off, and you can always see, you know, Matt Smith does a hell of a job of where you can always see the wheels turning in his eyes constantly. So I thought that was really good. You know, and it's so funny too, because, you know, I think I've seen glimpses of Matt Smith here and there. I haven't really seen him other than Doctor Who, where he was kind of this goofy guy that had a dark side hidden behind the goofy and everything.
Right.
Now it's like the dark side's up front.
Yeah, just seeing him go full dark.
Dark side, and then occasionally the heart shows up, and it's like, oh, I guess you're a nice guy. you know, but it shows that he's not one-dimensional. He's not a twirling mustache type character and everything,
right?
Which I think helps. I think, you know, he kind of goes, you know, does the spectrum. At one point he's the protagonist, and he's the, you know, the villain, and so he kind of jumps back and forth. But for the most part, he kind of lands in the middle. And but you know, I think we talked about this. Overall, there's not a single character in the show that you go, they're just pure good.
Oh yeah.
There's no one.
Everyone's got skeletons in the closet. Like yeah.
And just when you think, well, that person's pretty decent, then they get burnt to death or something. Like, okay, well, there goes the good guy. I thought he was going to be protagonist. No,
it's like they were too good for this world, and
yeah, apparently this world, you're just not meant for this world. Bye. You know, so it's like, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that would be mine. Who's your favorite?
I honestly have two favorites, and then like a couple honorable mentions, just because I really like their performances. Viserys and Daemon. I love the brotherly dynamic. They had me hooked from the start with the whole them being brothers.
Right.
But yeah, with Viserys, like the thing I really like about his character is, like, you know, he's one of those people that, like, he does have skeletons in the closet, but he's one of those people that's like really trying to think forward, right? Like he's really trying to think ahead and be like, you know, the voice of reason, right? Where it's like, you know, despite our differences, despite all of this shit that we've been through and all of these things that we have against each other,
right?
Like we need to just be a family. We need to just sit down and
that
like
speech,
yeah, like we need to put aside all of that for the safety and the betterment of the realm, because we are the most important family in the realm right now. Like we control everything, we make all of the decisions, like we do all of this, and like something breaking out that is going to like break the sanctity of that, it's going to break the realm. It's going to destroy
cause
the realm.
Chaos and destroy the kingdom. Yeah,
exactly. And so like I just really liked his character for, like, even though, you know, he definitely had his moments towards the beginning of the season where it was like, man, like you're kind of an asshole, or like, man, like you're not really putting in the effort that you should. It was like by the end he came to that full realization and had a real just turn of like trying to only be that voice of reason that was like, look, I'm gonna die soon, and I see the direction that things are going, and I really don't like it. Like, we need to fix this, otherwise everything's kaput.
Right.
And I just really liked that about his character. With Damon, he's one of those characters that I feel like I'm probably going to like the entirety of his run, but it's gonna be for different reasons throughout his run.
Okay.
So like, there's certain aspects of him where it's like there's certain moments where it's like, man, I like how reckless he's being right now. I like the fact that, like, you know, he's taking it by the horns and like really trying to like take charge of this.
Right.
But then there's other moments where it's like that specific quality of Damon probably isn't the best for like the situation that's going on. And so that's something that I really like about his character, is that there's qualities of him that like you like for certain moments and certain sequences, but then that exact same quality can be used, put next to a different situation, and it becomes a completely different like viewpoint where it's like, whoa, like I don't really like that quality as much now about you, because like the way that you're using it in tandem with this situation is like way out of line, right? So like his recklessness is perfect for moments like when he's at war with the crab eater and he sees him go into the cave and then he just chases after him, right?
Goes
like
to
moments
the
of recklessness like that, really good for moments like that, and like kind of like the heroism aspect of it. But then moments of recklessness like what you're talking about, when he grabs the queen by her throat, it's like, whoa, dude, like maybe not the right choice.
It's like, woo, scale her back.
Yeah, and it's like, and I think that that's something that we're gonna honestly see kind of carry through with his character, where it's like there's gonna be moments where you know, he's making sacrifices, or like he's having these moments of recklessness or what have you, that will make you more endeared to the character. But then at the very same moment, they're going to have something that happens like next episode, and his response to it is going to be so out of line and so just like pushing the level up more, that like you're like, man, like you're going off the deep end here, bro. Like,
But I think that's actually good for the writers, because they're showing that, you know, even when he can seemingly be reasonable, you push the right buttons, and that's the way most people are. Even the most reasonable person, you push the right buttons, and they can go completely off the rails. But you brought up the crab eater, so that was one thing. His following the crab eater into the cave, and then he comes out with the crab eater's half of his body and everything. So when I told you about how that felt abrupt and that felt like I missed something, you said just wait. What was it that you felt later on, that, because it almost like you said something else explains it later on?
Well, the only thing with that I was kind of alluding to was like the idea that I don't know if, because this was something that they kind of talked about in the original Game of Thrones series, and they showed it quite a bit too. So I don't know if this was the intention of like the showrunners with this, but what I thought they were trying to do was allude to how sharp Daemon's blade is.
Oh,
so
interesting.
what I thought they were trying to allude to was like, we're not going to show you this fight because it wouldn't really be that interesting. It's literally Daemon running in after him and then chopping him in half with one swing.
With one swing,
right? And so I thought that the way that they kind of like elaborated on that was how they handled man, I forget his name. There's so many different characters, but the guy that calls out Rhaenyra and then he takes his skull off.
Yeah,
I thought that
was, and he did it all in one swing.
Exactly. That's kind of what I thought that they were like elaborating on, was like, this blade is so sharp that, you know, his fight with the crab eater wasn't really a fight.
Okay,
He
I
just
see it
walked
now.
in and
Between
cleaved
also
him in
his
half.
his blade being so sharp, but his speed, because when he took the dude's head off,
Right.
it was so
It was
fast.
super fast.
I mean,
yeah.
it's like no one had a chance to react.
Exactly.
It was like, and dude's head was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
okay, I see that. I thought you were hinting at that somehow Damon had made some kind of deal with the crab eater, and then when he cornered him, he's like, "Deal's off." Like,
Oh,
but
yeah,
no, that
no.
makes more sense. It was just about the speed of his blade and everything. I
Mm.
still think maybe they should have showed it, but
Yeah, like it does kind of feel like a missed opportunity, especially because like I was just saying, like, you know, they've talked constantly, even in the original Game of Thrones, about how sharp Valyrian steel is, and like how it's like, you know, more than a blade. Like it's almost
Right.
like the equivalent today of like a lightsaber, except it's not burning; it's still just cutting, right?
Yeah. And it could have been a really cool scene because he could have had him running up to his soldiers and give him some commands, and he just stops talking and then just and they're like standing there, and then you see Damon standing back with his blade up, and they're like,
right.
right. So
yeah.
I mean, they could have done something with that. All right, so we probably should move into our news segment for now and let you take it from there. So what news do you want to share with our audience?
Okay. Yeah, so the only real, like, I'll have more like kind of like different news topics and like different kind of things that we would be able to conversate over more on in the future. But just for today's episode, I kind of just wanted to talk about all of these different trailers that have been coming out.
That have been coming out lately, yeah.
Yeah, so like first of all, I actually kind of want to start with the X-Men 97 trailer.
Oh,
Have you seen that?
I saw that. It's interesting.
Yeah, so I wanted to get your opinion because a bunch of people are talking about, do you think that, especially with the kind of track record that we've seen Disney on lately, do you think that it's more of a nostalgia bait and switch, or that it's more of like an actual labor of love, right? Like it's like actually something that's gonna, you know, really have some effort put in and really, really carry its own weight, as opposed to only using that nostalgia factor as like a way to get people watching it.
So I'm probably not amongst the best person to ask about this. I didn't really care for the X-Men cartoon.
Oh, okay.
So I know it probably surprises everybody. I felt it was a little too simplistic, and I was a big X-Men fan, so that was the problem. Is I read all the X-Men comics. I was way into X-Men, and of course the allegory for race wars and everything, the mutants symbolizing that and everything. So I was way into it. So I felt the cartoon was weak on that, weak on character, weak on development. But a lot of people loved it, and I just wasn't part of that. I think it is purely a nostalgia play. I don't think there's a lot of work they have to do because, like I said, I didn't care for the original one, so I don't think it's going to take much to be as good as that or even better. So, but to your point, though, I think Marvel lately has been dropping the ball dramatically, and they've been having the content creators be people that don't like the source material. But again, I think that was true of the original one. I don't think I think they knew on high level what the source material was, but I don't think they were fans of it. They were just making a cartoon, and it was literally color by numbers, just with the X-Men painted in. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll be hard to match that. I do think through today's lens, I have a feeling people will be more critical of it. So even if it's just as good or even better than the original, I think all the warts and all will show, and the people will be like, why do we want this one back? So that's the way I feel about it. So I didn't even know, like, you watching the trailer, it's like, oh, Professor X died at the end of it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that because I didn't watch it. So,
yeah. That was kind of like my whole thing too. Is like I really like the style of it. Like because I started watching like the original episodes of it because they have it all up on Disney Plus now. I started watching a little bit of the original episodes. I'm only like a little bit into season 1 right now. But I really do like the style of like all of the characters and everything like that, and like the voice acting is like pretty decent and everything, but I can definitely like already kind of see like what you're talking about, where it's like story wise and like kind of the way that the story gets communicated isn't it isn't like very uh it doesn't hook me nearly as much. And I think that it might partially be because like the way that the communication is done in that show is like a little bit like it's definitely like Saturday morning cartoon. Like it almost feels like you kind of take like the vibe of like the dialogue and stuff from something like Power Rangers and apply it to X-Men,
And that's
right?
exactly
And that's
and I think, unfortunately, I think the problem was, especially then, and it still happens nowadays too, but especially then, they felt like they had to dumb down the content for kids. But you got to keep in mind, this is really close to the same time as like Batman the animated series, which storytelling was first. They came up with really good stories, quite often unique stories, and then they put it in a kids cartoon. So much
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah.
So I just wasn't a fan of it.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about was, of course, the Invincible Part 2 trailer.
Yeah.
So man, there's so much going on in this trailer that I don't know like how they're gonna cover all the stuff that they like mention in this trailer in
Right.
4 episodes, because they got stuff with the Lizard League going on.
Right.
Which
I think the Lizard League are just going to be a joke, though. I think that's what they're doing with that.
I'm not sure.
You
because
think there's going to be more to it?
I don't know. Like, there's a moment in the comics where the Lizard League are like actually like a legitimate threat, and I don't know if they're gonna have that moment be in this season, because one of the things that they showed was you know all of the heroes we know at a funeral for somebody. And so I'm speculating that it's if they're keeping up with how the comics went, then I'm gonna speculate and say that it's Duplicate that gets killed.
Oh, yeah.
But the moment that happens is like what I was talking about. It's this big moment with the Lizard League where they prove themselves as like more than just like kind of a joke
and in
threat.
the trailer, they show them ripping apart a bunch of duplicates.
Right. And so if they do that, the thing is like for one, like that's a big moment in the comics, right? And you have Immortal going through like his big own arc in the comics because of that happening.
Right, because he has a relationship with her at this point.
Yeah. But then like they also kind of spoilery talk, people. I'm sorry.
I guess spoiler alert. I didn't know those were coming. But I guess if you got news, then maybe it is spoilerish. Yeah, that's a good point.
But they also showed parts from what we would assume would be the Sequid War, right? Which is all of those pink tentacle monsters from Mars,
right? The mind control beast.
Yeah. And that's like a pretty significant like arc as well. And then they also showed bits of Angstrom Levy
showing up again,
going to different dimensions and presumably gathering up a bunch of different Invincibles to start the Invincible War.
Right.
And so my thing with that is like they are showing so many different like big moments that happen in the comics all in this one trailer. And it's like I don't know, like, are they going to literally do it like episode by episode where it's like one episode we're dealing with the Sequids, the next episode we're doing the Invincible War, the next episode we're doing Lizard League? Like, I hope that it doesn't.
They're not compressing it that much.
Yeah, right.
I don't think so. I think my suspicion is season 2 is going to end with the beginning of the Invincible War. I think this is all leading up to it, and then it's going to end with Invincible looking up, and there's all these other Invincibles showing up. And I think that's what they're going to lead with that, which, that ends up being a nasty situation, especially. No, I won't spoil it, but it's nasty. Nastiness there. Nasty. That's all I got to say. It's just nasty. Especially, just think about the college episode and what was happening with those college students, and then apply it to the Invincible War. It's nasty.
Right. Yeah.
So, at any rate, yeah. That's my theory. I think they're
Okay.
building to it, because then after that you're going to actually have the Vultramites finally coming to attack, and that's where the Invincible War comes back into play when they finally come to attack Earth,
Right.
and one of the tools that they use to fight them back and everything.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that it doesn't. I hope that it's not just like a mess of like all of these
Yeah,
different
I hope
like
not too.
huge plot points.
Well,
that
because then the problem is it's kind of like he's blowing all his big stories, and if he wants to have this go on for years and years,
right.
that's you need to save those.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, this second season, as much as I've enjoyed it, it does feel like it is compressed. Like he's jumping around a lot, and I don't remember that being these stories being so compressed. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully, he's not continuing that trend, and that he'll. It's like it's okay, Robert. It's okay to stretch it out a little bit. We're with you. It's
Rob,
good.
chill, man.
We're all good. Take your time. Take a breath, man. Take a breath. Woo, man. Take a breath. I'm passing out because you have no oxygen. Come on. All right. Go ahead. What do you have?
So I guess the last thing we'll go ahead and cover was the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer. Yeah, it's just really exciting to finally have some legitimate X-Men connection to the MCU.
Right.
And not only that, but I really wasn't expecting it, even though it makes perfect sense. I really wasn't expecting the TVA to show up.
Right.
I wasn't expecting them to be like a big player in the movie, even though, with the way that Deadpool 2 ended, it makes perfect sense that the TVA would come in and be like,
for once the writers went, hey, we could connect this all and do a good job with it.
yeah.
And again, like you were talking about earlier, people that actually love the source material. Ryan Reynolds really loves the source material, which how could you not, being that the source material was based off of you, right? It's just like Samuel Jackson, with the new Nick Fury. It's like, hey, why don't we base it off of this particular actor? And that's where it all went from there. And so the cool thing that he finally gets to do it and do it right. And, I think he felt maybe that Deadpool 2 wasn't quite what he wanted it to be, but he still came up with a great ending that they're able to kick off with this. And I think they're going to have a lot of fun with it. And I think, if they play their cards right, this gives them an opportunity to fix a bunch of things. Right. In a fun and exciting way, not like The Flash, which they fixed a bunch of things, but then decided to break them again. They decided to not fix them. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It don't matter anyway, because we're just rebooting everything.
Right. One theory that kind of intrigues me, and I haven't seen like anybody else really talking about it. So I have to imagine that Hugh Jackman most likely isn't going to be playing Wolverine after this movie, right?
Well, I think he's still going to play Wolverine again in Secret War.
Oh, okay.
I think he will be in Secret Wars as well.
Okay.
So what were you thinking that?
Well, so I was just wondering, like, is this possibly their way of introducing the new Wolverine, like whoever's going to take over the reins, right?
Okay, well then let me qualify my statement. There will be a Wolverine in Secret Wars. I'm 100% confident. Whether or not it's Hugh Jackman, or if, like, to your point, because I think in the trailer, I think that's one of the things they hinted at, that there's multiple Wolverines in this movie, right? And so the part where he's walking to the casino and you see the back of Wolverine with the white jacket on,
suit, yeah.
That's sort of a variant character of Wolverine where he had the eye patch and everything. And so that's one way they could do it, that it could be that there's multiple Wolverines he encounters, which would also make the gag at the end of the trailer even make more sense, because clearly when Wolverine shows up, he thinks that this is somebody here to help him. And then when he unleashes his claws, he's like, wait a minute, maybe you're not my Wolverine.
Right.
Maybe you're not the Wolverine I thought was here to help me. Right? So I think that both those scenes, I think, are telling us that there will be multiple Wolverines, whether they're all being played by Hugh Jackman, or if they're actually smart enough to say, Hugh, I know you don't want to continue this. Is this the opportunity? Now, the one that I've been hearing the rumors about is Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe, yeah.
And he's like all pumped up and everything now. Yeah. And the thing is in the comics, Wolverine was always a short guy.
Always a short dude,
right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Hugh Jackman's 6'5" or something like that. So it'd be perfect, because then they could actually be, and it'd be something that Kevin Feige would be big into, have Wolverine more accurate height-wise as well, because a Wolverine is a small wolf-type creature, right?
Yeah.
So I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, well, and it was just, it was interesting to me, and like the whole idea of like, you know, all of the marketing for Deadpool 3 prior to this trailer was very, very like showing Jackman's face, like talking about Hugh Jackman being part of it. Like that was a big part of the marketing appeal prior to this trailer. But then we get this trailer
and they don't show his face
we don't
at all.
see Hugh Jackman at all.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, like
makes you wonder. Wonder if there's something that's subterfuge going on
right,
here.
yeah.
That they're trying to distract us with the Hugh Jackman over here. You know you love Hugh Jackman. Daniel Radcliffe, ha!
Right,
You know?
exactly.
Surprise!
Yeah, so that was my big thought about it, that like I hadn't really seen like anybody else bring that up, where it was like, y'all realize like we got Wolverine in this trailer, but we didn't see Hugh Jackman at all.
Right.
Like we just saw Wolverine.
When we know it was Wolverine, 2 shots of we know it's Wolverine.
Yeah.
And neither one of them was the face of Hugh Jackman.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. All right, sir. Well, thank you again for joining me and our big return.
Hey.
So Mind the Nerdist Gap is back for 2024. And hopefully we'll get back in stride and have weekly episodes again. And until then, we'll see you next time.
See you around, everybody.
Bye.
Orders, Commander.
How many times must I tell you? Mind the Nerdist Gap!